Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of In the Pit with Lobo Tigre. Our victim of the hour is our good friend Bob Felder of Renaissance Gold. We say that because we followed Bob and Ron before him at Renaissance for many, many years. I've written about it. If you've been following me for a while, you've probably heard about it. And this is the prospect generator of prospect generators. So we want to get an update from Bob on what they're doing now. And take it away, Bob.
Thanks, Lobo. We're very busy. This year we've got actually getting 8 of our projects drilled funded by partners, and so we're operating at a very high level. We're quite happy about that because having come through a difficult market, we're now getting a lot of targets tested every year, and our thesis and philosophy is exploration is difficult, and so if we can test as many high quality targets as possible, we increase our chances and our shareholders' chances for a big success.
That was admirably succinct. We're having a good run of those succinct. We like that. So you're a prospect generator. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about the model. We use other people's money to pay for the high risk exploration costs. We like that, but we also give away a large chunk of the project in exchange for that. Walk me through that's why a good thing. If the project's any good, why do I want to give 70% of it away?
Well, as you know, as most people know, raising money in the capital markets can be difficult, and in the past 6-7 years it's been even more difficult for explorers. So by running a prospect generator joint venture business model, we leverage our risk by not having to go back to market as often by spending partners' money. So at the end of the day, and our predecessor AUEX with Long Canyon is a good example of that, they only had a minority interest in Long Canyon, but it was a very big win for shareholders. So we think it's a worthwhile trade-off to leverage risk on the early side, and even if we only have 30 or 40% of a project that's a success, it's a very big win for shareholders.
Right. One of the things Bob didn't specify in there is the share count. If you use other people's money to pay for this high-risk drilling, if your partners are doing that, you keep your share dilution to a minimum. It's a huge part of what you're talking about with the AUEX. Yeah. When the transaction finally happened, the AUEX shareholders had, I don't remember how many it was like 30, 40 million shares out, and the leverage to the upside on that was huge compared to the other side of the equation. Right. So.
Right.
Okay, so we're using other people's money. We have 8 projects being tested this year, is that what you said?
That's correct.
And those agreements didn't happen just now. So how did you get other people to step up with money during the market downturn to have that work being done now? I mean, gold's 1,400 now, but that wasn't the case when you made these deals.
During 2013 through 16, as you know, the market was very soft. And the number of joint ventures and projects that we got drilled by partners was maybe 1 or 2 a year. Starting in 2017, we suddenly saw a big ramp up in activity and interest in our projects. So since 2 years ago, we've done 14 new property deals. So we've seen a ramp up in interest in the last 2 years, preceding the recent run up in the gold price. So it's just, there's been a lot of Australian money coming into the US and coming into North America. That was part of it. We have 4 Australian partners now on our projects. And so we've been doing steady deal flow for the last 2 years, and I just closed the last 4 property deals early in 2019. So that teed up a lot of drilling this year, and actually those were deals with larger companies, Hawk Shield out of Peru and Oceanic Gold. Right. So we're quite pleased. Summer's usually a quiet time, but right now I've got several conversations and negotiations going on for additional deals. They tend to take a while, and a lot of companies think about closing deals late in the year so that they're ready to ramp up and start for next field season. So right now I'm focused on teeing up some projects for next year. But so it's a process. We're always marketing projects. We're always generating new projects because partners will come back for repeat business and they want to see what's new. So I can't just keep showing the same projects. Sure. We want to generate new things. And we also think that with the apparent success at our Silicon project, which AngloGold Ashanti has an option on, we're generating other projects that are analogous to Silicon because we think that will also attract a lot of people to us once news comes out on that project.
Let's come back to Silicon. I want to zero in on something that says really interesting. Australian money stepping up to the plate. Why would that be? Well, in the United States, we're all celebrating that gold has finally broken out of this rut it's been in for all these years. But in Australian dollar terms, gold has been hitting record nominal highs, like all-time highs in Australian dollar terms. And the Australian miners have been doing really well. And they've been aggressive. The Atlantic Gold takeover, an Australian company most people have never heard of. Right. So it's interesting to see that trickling down to the grassroots level. So let's talk about Silicon. This is one of the projects that you JV'd, and more than JV, you're going to end up with just a royalty. But
Right.
they're going gangbusters. Talk us through that story.
Silicon ends up being a one-off type of deal. We generated a target there. It's a large alteration cell, no gold on surface. So we showed it to a lot of companies with really little interest through 2015 and 16. In 2017, we showed it to Anglo, and they said, we like this project. It's a very conceptual target. Takes drilling to test the depths of the deeper part of the system. They said, but we want to have a path to 100%. And so what they offered us was quick cash, $3 million in 3 years, and we retain a 1% royalty. So at the time, there was no deals coming on the project. Right. It was potentially non-dilutive financing of $3 million, and so we took the deal. It just so happens we don't really know much about the data, but all the circumstantial evidence is pointing to that they're onto something significant. Their CEO has spoken publicly about the project. They've paid us the first 2 anniversary payments. Actually, total so far, they've paid us $600,000 US in cash, and the last payment is due in June of next year. It's $2.4 million US. So at that point, they will have completed the option, earned 100%, and we will get a 1% NSR. So it's a bit of a one-off. It's still very positive for the company. We don't look back and say shoulda, woulda, coulda. If it was only an earn-in, how good it would be.
Yeah.
It's still very positive for the company, and we think that the royalty has potential to be worth quite a lot to us.
Well, there's a couple things to pick apart in here. One is, when the market is down and you're not having the money coming in, as they say, friend or foe, take the dough. So nobody, I think, can fault you for taking the money. $3 million when money's not coming in the doors is nothing to sneeze at.
Right.
But the other part is, and I hadn't really thought about it until you just said it right now, is that it's not like there is visible gold in outcrop on surface and a big vein there that you just needed to drill under or something. This is a blind target.
There's no gold on surface.
It's a completely conceptual approach. And in that case, it kind of makes sense for them to say, okay, well, we'll be the ones to take the risk to test this, but we want, if we do all the heavy lifting, then we want to win big here.
Right.
All right, and you're also being very cautious, and I'm sure your lawyers would be happy with your answers and the way you describe this. But what color can you give us on why are we excited about this? Anglo, they're a big company. What's material to you is not material to them. So I get that they're not press releasing every drill hole. They haven't put out any press releases at all on any drill holes.
They've only released how much drilling they've done. That's
okay.
About it.
So we know that if they weren't happy with what they were finding, they would have stopped.
Right.
And do we know how much drilling they've done, or how happy do we think they are?
We have a sense. We actually, on our website and in our presentation, we show a map of their drill sites, and we estimate that they've drilled probably 50 holes to date.
50.
Those holes occupy a 3-kilometer long strike length along what we call the Silicon-Thompson Fault Corridor. So they've drilled a lot in a short period of time. They've reached the end of their first permit, their notice of intent. There's public documents at the BLM that show that they're working on another permit that's going to propose 155 acres of additional disturbance, which is a large project. So there's reasons to believe that they're very encouraged and that they're planning to come back with a big program. And and the fact that their CEO spoke about it publicly, I think, says something.
Yeah, so, for a big company, for them to mention an early stage project.
The other thing to mention too is the 3 kilometers of strike length of drilling. This is in the middle of a very, very large alteration zone. It's a high-level steam-heated alteration zone. There was historic mercury prospects on it. So the potential for size is very real out there. Now that we've established that there is gold deep in the system, it's not that deep, but at depth below the mercury occurrences and below the steam-heated alteration, we think this project has potential to be multi-million ounce discovery and maybe even in excess of 5 million ounces. So if that'll be, time will tell what that looks like, and that will also influence what we think our royalty is eventually going to be worth.
Sure. So good news is if this is a big thing and it becomes a mine, and you guys are going to get cash flow out of that, and what's better than exploration with cash flow, right? I get that, but even if it goes gangbusters, we're still talking many years down the road before that cash flows. You'll get your 2.4 million, but then it'll be a long hiatus. So that's the bet. On the other hand, first AUX has the Long Canyon thing, and now it's the same team. And so if there's another mine being built and the same team delivers again, one would think that has to change the conversations. Since this whole Silicon thing started, have you found more partners coming to you and saying, what else do you have?
Not quite yet, and I think it's because there's no news out on silicon other than what we can talk about. We're actually getting ready for that by generating a bunch of new epithermal targets with similarities and taking away what we learned at silicon. We do a lot of front-end spectral work and alteration mineralogy to help us sort of vector in towards where the gold systems might be. We have 3 new targets that are becoming projects that we'll probably start marketing this fall. So we're anticipating that as the silicon news comes out, there will be people drawn to us, and we wanted to be ready to have some new things to show. So we are working on that.
Okay, so that was the forward-looking statement. What else is being tested this year? And do you have any favorites? I always ask you, which one's your favorite? And you hate that question, but I gotta ask.
Well, we have 7 other projects besides silicon getting drilled, and rather than going through them one at a time, we have both Carlin-type targets and we have both epithermal targets. There's a few of them that are conceptual targets with not much gold on surface. There's others that are outcropping gold systems with 2, 3, 4 gram gold on surface that's never really had a deep test. Those are both the epithermals and the Carlins in that case. So we're confident that we're going to get some encouraging drilling this year. Whether or not it's material and significant remains to be seen. That's always the question with exploration. But we just announced today that we started drilling on 2 of those projects, the Fat Lizard and the Ferguson Mountain projects. Those are with Oceana Gold and Hochschild. So we anticipate steady news flow for the rest of the year. Once these drilling results start coming in, and we're going to drill another 7 projects between now and the end of the year. So there'll be a lot of news flow and a lot of potential. Any one of these things could be, change the game for us.
All right, and it's other people's money going into all of this.
Yes.
But you still have some burn here. So I got to ask the financial question. How much is Renaissance going to spend over the next year of its own money, and how much do you have in the bank?
I'll go back a little bit. Last year, and since we're in Canada, I'll talk in Canadian dollars now. We spent about 2.2 million Canadian last year, and our partners spent 8.4 million. So as far as a business metric goes, we're burning about 20% of the total effort being put in the ground on our projects. This year, it's a forward-looking statement. Our burn's about the same. So it varies depending on how many projects we operate, because we recover costs, we recover some salary and that kind of thing when we operate projects. Right now, we're operating 2. So our burn is between, somewhere around 2 million Canadian a year. It looks like the drilling that's anticipated, and we have some hard number budgets, some we're not sure about yet what the partner's going to do, but it looks like it'll be in the $6 to $8 million at least. And this is all sort of with low estimates on what Anglo's doing at silicon, because we just don't know.
Right.
So they're conservative, but we're keeping up the ratio, high number of projects getting drilled, mostly partner money getting spent, and we think, from an investor standpoint, we're executing well, we're exposing ourselves to high level of potential success by drilling a lot of targets. They're all high quality targets. We don't just check the box and bring in new projects. They have to make the grade, so to speak. So I think it's, we're doing very well, and any one of these could be a game changer for us.
All right. So you spend about $2 million Canadian per year. How much do you have in the bank?
We've got about 4 million Canadian in the bank right now. And we're anticipating the 2.4 million US from Anglo, which is 3.1 Canadian. So we don't think we need to go to market for 2 to 3 years.
That's the big thing, because if I'm a potential shareholder out there and I like the prospect generator model, but I think there might be a financing soon, and I'm a qualified investor, then obviously I want to see if I can get a warrant or something. So forget that. That's not going to happen. But let's talk about that. So I'm a potential investor, and you've got all this stuff going, but you always have all this stuff going. Every time we get together, I ask you, what are your favorite projects? What might we see this year? Why should anybody buy this stock now? Why not wait till you have the next Long Canyon shaping up, or like with drill holes in it or something like? Why
That's a good question, and having just listened to your talk and your investment philosophy, it really depends on the investor's philosophy. If they want to try to maximize their exposure to upside, they want to buy as early as possible and try to get the 10 banger or better. Anybody could wait until one of these projects raises its head above the others, looks like it's going to get legs and go, and buy then. But I think that as time goes on, and if the gold price keeps running in the upward direction, we're going to get more and more expensive. So in the typical investment thesis of buy low, sell high, now might be the time.
Now might be the time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a fair enough answer. I have the one question I always have to ask everybody, the skin in the game question. My whole philosophy, if you will, or my business, my newsletter, is that I only write about things I'm willing to put my own money into. So how much skin do you have in the game here?
I own about 1.5% of the Renaissance shares, and I came about those shares. I founded a company in 2011. We worked very hard for 6 years building a portfolio, building a company, and it was actually during 6 very bad years in the market, so it was a difficult go. That company was Kinetic Gold. Renaissance acquired Kinetic Gold and all the assets and all our portfolio.
And you.
2 years ago, and me. And so it was a share purchase agreement, so the shares of Renaissance that I have bought additional shares on the open market, but not large amounts, but so I own about 1.5% now.
Okay. All right. So Silicon, at what point do they have to say something, or do they ever have to say anything? Is there a point at which we'll actually have a press release with grades or
I sure hope so. You know, we're all bound by the disclosure requirements of our exchanges. And Anglo being a large company, when this becomes material to them is when they probably say we have to say something about it. To me, that's a subjective question, because is a 1 million ounce inferred resource material to Anglo Gold Ashanti? You know, they have 14 mines in 9 countries. I'm not sure how much they produce every year, but they're a very large company. So they could probably, if they chose to, wait until longer than we'd like to say anything about it. We're hoping that, you know, they put out quarterly disclosures, and every time we hope that maybe they'll start talking about the drill results, but not sure. We just kind of have to wait and see.
All right.
You know, it's a little frustrating.
Is it possible that they could actually give you that other 2.4 million and still not have a press release out on it? I mean,
it is possible.
They wouldn't have to explain to their shareholders why we're spending $3 million on it?
They might. You know, that's hard for me to judge what goes on within the boardroom of Anglo.
I was hoping that would give us an outside figure, right? You know, by June next year, they have to cough up 2.5.
Well, one thing I do know is they've committed to give a paper and a talk at a symposium next May in Reno. So we would assume that by then they're not going to get up in public and not say anything. You know, that's 10 months from now. But we're hoping that they'll start talking about it in some fashion earlier, even just to give the market a flavor for what kind of results are you seeing on this project. But I don't think they have an obligation to. They know that we would like them to, but it's just one of those things where
I understand.
It's hard for us to push too hard on that.
So I have to say, you know, I'm giving you a bit of a freebie here in that I just did a due diligence trip through Nevada and several western states, United States, and we did stop and see the Silicon project, and we saw other projects in the area. This is in the area of Beatty, Nevada, in southern Nevada. And that has become quite the hot area play, and Corvus Gold is working in that area. Other players have staked, and Curra's working there. And this is the topic of conversation. Everybody's talking about the Silicon discovery and what's the mystery, you know, what has Anglo got going there? 50 holes. Nobody drills 50 holes if they're not encouraged with the results they're getting. So watch this space. Something exciting, I think, is coming this way, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. Wish you all the luck with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you again.